So we are still reading Watson's Go to Birmingham. I want you to pay attention to the imagery in this chapter. Sometimes writers can simply say, the room was blue, the air felt cold. And we get it, we can see that. But sometimes they paint a picture for us that helps us to feel more like we're there instead of just looking into a story. And I think Christopher Paul Curtis does that very well in this chapter. So just pay attention to the imagery as we read chapter 10, Tangled Up in God's Beard. Ohio, about 1 minute away. This was the first interesting thing that Mama had come up with since we had been through Detroit. Just outside of Toledo, we pulled over at a rest stop. Mama said, "Okay, who's got to go to the bathroom? Who's hungry?" We got out of the car and started scratching and stretching. The Ohio rest stop was really cool. It was chopped right out of the forest and had picnic tables made out of giant logs. The bathrooms were made out of the same kind of log cabin wood. The only thing about them was that they looked kind of small from the outside. Mama looked in her Watson's Go to Birmingham 1963 book and told us, "Okay, just a sandwich, some fruit, and some Kool-Aid here. Daniel, could you open the trunk so I can get the things out of the cooler?" While Mama got the food and Dad looked under the hood of the brown bomber, I went to the door in the little log cabin that had men carved on it. As soon as I opened the door, I gagged. The toilets in Ohio weren't anything like Michigan toilets. Instead of a white stool with a seat, there was just a seat on a piece of wood with a great big open black hole underneath, with the sound of flies coming out of it. No flusher, no water, no nothing. It looked like if you sat on the seat, you might end up getting sucked down under Ohio somewhere. I breathed through my mouth and spent only enough time in that log cabin bathroom to unroll a bunch of toilet paper. The woods outside looked like a whole lot better bathroom. When I was done in the woods, I passed Byron, who forgot again about his promise not to talk. He told me, "Man, they must be crazy if they think I'm going to set my behind on that hole." By's hands were full of toilet paper, too. We ate our lunch on one of the picnic tables, and Mama made a jug of Kool-Aid with water that me and Joey pumped. Only Mama liked it, though. The water seemed like it had metal in it and made the Kool-Aid taste like great medicine. Me, Dad, Bi, and Joey dumped our Kool-Aid when Mama wasn't looking, but I had to ask for seconds and plug my nose and drink it because day one was my day to have peanut butter and jelly, and Mama always puts too much peanut butter on the sandwich, and you've got to have something to wash it down in case you start choking. When we finished eating, Byron asked, "What's the word on them toilets?" Mama and Dad cracked up. "So you like those, huh?" Dad said. Mama said, "You better get used to those, Byron. That's an outhouse, and that's what Grandma Sands has." What? If you try to be cool all the time and something surprises you, you sure do look stupid. Uh-huh, Dad said. That's where you're going to be taking care of your business for a while. I said, "Wait, let me dig this. You mean if I got to go to the bathroom, I got to go outside into a little nasty thing like that? Ain't they got no sanitation laws down there? How you gonna have a hole for a toilet and not get folks sick? Don't them things attract flies?" Mama and Dad laughed again. Mama said, "Your Grandma Sands always says it seems a lot nastier to her to be doing that in the house. The way she looks at it, a house is a whole lot nicer place if the facilities are outside." "Whew, I remember those outhouses," Dad said. "I remember when we used to go visit my grandmother in the country, and there'd be a Sears catalog in the outhouse, and when you were done, you just tore a page out of the catalog and—" "We get the point, Daniel." Mama stopped Dad. After lunch, Vi went back into the log cabin outhouse and came back with his pockets bulging with toilet paper. He told me, "Man, they must be on dope if they think I'm gonna wipe my butt on some rough old catalog paper." We loaded the cooler back in the car and got back on I-75. When you're 10 years old, like me, some of the time, no matter how excited you are, or no matter how hard you try, you just can't help falling asleep in the car. I did a lot better than Joey, though. She was out before I'd even sucked all the leftover peanut butter out of my teeth. She stretched out across the back seat, and me and Vi argued about who would hold her head and who would hold her feet. Joey drooled a lot, so it was the worst job to hold her head. We had teased Mama so many times about planning everything so much in her notebook that Vi decided to be cute and asked, Could someone check that Watson's Go to Birmingham book and see who's supposed to be holding Joey's leaky head for the first 100 miles in Ohio? Mama and Dad looked at each other and laughed, and I did too. I really don't know why bullies have such a good sense of humor. It didn't matter who won the argument, because the car started rocking me to sleep. Maybe someone could say the brown bomber was old and ugly, but you could never say anything bad about its seats. They were the best things in the world. I leaned my head back and watched Ohio go zipping by. I couldn't keep my head from sinking deeper and deeper into the brown bomber's seat. I woke up and got real nervous real fast. I felt something wet in my pants starting to run down my leg. I opened my eyes and said, "Phew!" It was just Joey drooling all over me. I complained, and Mama made Bi take Joey's head for a while. I took her shoes off for her, and inside one of her shoes was kind of a worn down picture of a little white boy with a girl's hairdo and a smiling dog. In a circle around both of them, it said Buster Brown. Buster Brown used to be a shoe and clothing manufacturer. We actually had a Buster Brown plant in Silva a long, long, long time ago. But here's the logo for Buster Brown. So it's a little boy, and that's why he said he's got a girl's hairdo, because it's like a page boy kind of hairdo, and then a creepy smiling dog. And Buster Brown later became a cartoon character. But this and this is the logo that Kenny's talking about he saw in the bottom of Joey's shoe. As I drifted back to sleep, I wondered what a little white boy would think if he knew he was getting stepped on every day by my sister. Then my neck got rubberized again and my head nodded down. It nodded back up when I heard Mama say, real soft to Dad, "How you doing? Cincinnati's just ahead." "Oh, I'm fine. I still got a lot in me. Think I'll just stop in Cincy for a stretch and some gas." "Really?" Mama didn't sound too happy. "Sure, why not? The kids are all asleep and you look like you were about gone yourself." Mama didn't say anything, but I knew she'd have to change her plans if we didn't stop for the night in Cincinnati. Dad kept trying to make it seem okay. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, Willona. We might as well go just a little further." I wanted to lean up and whisper to Mama that I knew what Dad was planning. But the last time I was asleep, Byron had put Joey's head back in my lap, and I was just too lazy to move her. But I knew if I wasn't so sleepy, I could tell Mama what I'd heard Dad and Mr. Johnson saying before we left. Mr. Johnson knew a lot about cars, so Dad asked him to take a good look at the bomber before we went to Alabama. I was sitting in the car pretending I was driving, and Dad and Mr. Johnson were under the hood. "Oh, yeah, Daniel, this baby's sound as a dollar." "Well, let me ask you something, Theo," Dad had said. "Do you think she could run it to Alabama straight?" Hmm. Mr. Johnson thought for a minute. "I don't see why not. As long as you keep your eye on the oil and the water, it shouldn't give you a lick of trouble. The question isn't the car. The question is, could you do it straight?" "Well, the most I've done before is 8 hours, and Willona says this will take about 15. But I've talked to some people in the shop, and they say it shouldn't be too tough. A couple of them are from Texas, and they say they've driven it straight. Alabama's closer, so why not? This Plymouth can do it if you can, Daniel." "Good. Besides, think of the money we'll save. I'm gonna give it a shot, but I'm not gonna tell Willona. She'd die. She's got this whole trip planned down to the last minute." Dad made his voice go kind of high and southern. "And Daniel, between Lexington and Chattanooga, you will inhale 105,564 times, and you'll blink 436,475 times. That is, of course, unless you see something exciting, in which case you'll inhale 123,876 times and blink 437,098 times." Dad and Mr. Johnson cracked up. As we were going into Cincinnati, I wanted to lean up and whisper to Mama, "Hang on, Mama. You're going to blink and inhale about 62 zillion more times before you get out of this car." But the warm air and the highway noise and the brown bomber's seat and the way Joey was breathing all pushed me back to sleep. I was out through most of Kentucky, even though we stopped at some more Ohio-style rest stops. I was so tired that I even used a couple of the outhouses. But I kept the door open and made Dad stand outside in case I fell in. He'd be able to pull me out. The next time I woke up, we were pulled over at a Tennessee rest stop. There were no bathrooms and no outhouses or anything, just a pump and a picnic table. When Dad turned the headlights off, Everything disappeared into the blackest night anyone had seen. As we looked out of the windows, Mama checked her notebook and then announced, "This is the Appalachian Mountains. We are over 6,000 feet above sea level. This is higher than we've ever been before." And she didn't sound real happy about it either. All four doors of the brown bomber opened and the weird Watsons got out. As soon as everyone was awake enough to look around, we all bunched up and hugged up around Mama and Dad, even cool Byron. Dad laughed. "What's wrong with you guys?" "Daddy, look how scary it is here," Joey said, pointing at all the giant shapes in the darkness. "Nonsense, Punkin. Those are just the mountains." What Dad was calling just the mountains were the scariest things I'd ever seen. On every side of us were great big black hills, and behind these were even bigger, blacker hills. And behind these were the biggest and blackest hills. It looked like someone had crumpled up a pitch black blanket and dropped the weird Watsons down into the middle of it. The air up this high didn't seem right either. It made you feel like something bad was going to happen. If this was a movie, there would be loud, scary organ music playing right now. "Mommy," Joey asked, sounding real scared, "where did all the stars come from?" We all looked up, and instead of seeing the normal amount of stars, it looked like there had been a star explosion. There were more stars in the sky than empty space. "That's because the air is so clean here. This looks like the sky in Birmingham." Mama's right about that. It is because the air is so clean. But also when you're in the city, there are lights everywhere. Even if you're in a little town, like if you're in Silva and the street lights are on, it makes it harder to see the stars in the sky. We call it light pollution. It's not like dirty pollution, it's just light that's interfering with what we can see. And so when you guys go out to, if you live not in town, if you live out on the mountains somewhere and you don't have street lights or you don't have outside lights at your house that are on, and you look up at the sky, you can see tons and tons of stars. But when you're in the city and you're having to look through the lights that are in the city, sometimes you can't see a star at all. So they've grown up in the city. They haven't seen the stars that you guys have grown up seeing. So tonight, when it gets dark, I want you to step outside, turn off the lights that are going to interfere with what's around you, and just look up, assuming it's not cloudy. But look up and see the stars, and realize that kids that grow up in cities, they don't get to see that like you do. So appreciate it while you've got it. And again, Mama is right. It's also because of the pollution. There's no pollution there, so everything is clear. When you go to cities like Los Angeles, the smog is so bad that you really can't see through the pollution to see the stars, whether there's light or not. Up close to us in the rest stop, all we could see was the pump. Have you ever seen a water pump where you have to actually like pump, pump, pump and it comes out the other side? That's the kind of water that they had at the rest stops there. They still have those in most rest stops. Now they look a little different, but you can get water for like watering your dogs when you stop at a rest stop or to fill up water jugs. Um, Up close to us in the rest stop, all we could see was the pump. It looked like a deformed, evil, one-armed space robot. As our eyes got used to the dark, we could also see the picnic table, and behind it, that black woods. Most of the time, Mama and Dad don't like arguing in public, but Mama was real hot. I'm going to pause here one more time. Um, as we've come to words that are not appropriate school words, I have not said them because I won't. Um, they're there. If you're following along, you see them. I assume you can handle that. But I'm not going to say them now. I want you to be aware that there are some ways to use words that are otherwise inappropriate that are appropriate. For instance, heaven is a place that we talk about. Hell is also a place that we talk about. It's not always used as a curse word, okay? And in this case, I'm going to say the word hell. I don't need you running to your parents to say Miss Gilbert's cussing at you because I'm not. In this case, Kenny's using it to talk about a place, okay? So don't get really excited because I'm not doing anything wrong. Okay, okay. But you're all listening now, aren't you? Most of the time, Mama and Dad didn't like arguing in public, but Mama was real hot. She said, "Well, do you see what your nonstop driving has done? Do you see? Instead of being in a motel, you've driven us straight into hell." That got everyone's attention because Mama almost never cusses. This really scared me. I know it's stupid, but before I could stop myself, I said, Hell, I thought you said this was Tennessee. Joey started boo-hooing right away. Mama didn't cuss. Kenny didn't cuss. Miss Gilbert didn't cuss. Period. After we nervously nibbled on snacks, everyone sat on the same side of the picnic table. Me and Vi had to go to the bathroom in the woods. We found 2 trees where we could keep our eye on each other, and I said, Vi, do you think there are snakes out here? Snakes? I ain't scared of no snake. It's the people I'm worried about. I stopped looking at the ground and began watching the black woods. What people? I wished I'd picked a tree closer to Byron. You know how sometimes they exhibit racism because they don't know, like they've grown up in a place where they only ever see people that look like them. That that's true for a lot of us. We've only ever seen people that look just like us. Also true for Kenny and Byron and Joetta, and that their school was a predominantly African American school, so they aren't accustomed to being around white people either. And here in Appalachia, we have there are also some folklore, some stereotypes that we fall into here, right? So that's what we're getting ready to read about. What people? I wished I'd picked a tree closer to Byron. Well, didn't you hear Mama say this was Appalachia? So? Man, they got crackers and rednecks up here that ain't ever seen no Negroes before. If they caught you out here like this, they'd hang you now and eat you later. What's a redneck? It's a hillbilly. Only worse. Some of them don't even speak English. We made a break for the brown bomber. If Byron was trying to scare me, he was scaring himself too. I went too fast, though, and felt a couple of warm drips dribbling down my leg. This time I couldn't blame it on Joey's drooling either, but I didn't care. Having a little pee in your pants had to be better than being dinner for some redneck. Now, whether Byron thinks it's true or not, can we honestly say that as people who live in the mountains, I don't go out in search of African Americans to eat for dinner? So he's hearing things, he's hearing stereotypes, and he's passing that on to his little brother. Byron is probably trying to scare Kenny because that's what he does. He's a bully. We have to be real careful about spreading things that aren't true to younger people, anybody, but definitely to people who are younger than us, because they believe what we tell them. They look up to us. No matter if it's somebody who's 8 looking up to you or somebody who's 35 looking up to me, we have to be careful with what we say. We loaded the car back up, and no one really relaxed until Dad drove back out on I-75 and turned the headlights on. The lights knocked some of the darkness out of the way, and we felt safe again. Everybody was better and laughing and talking a mile a minute. I can't believe how this air feels, Dad said. He was right. Everything smelled light and green. Whose turn is it on the Ultraglide? Mine, I yelled, and I handed Mama Yakety Yak, and they all moaned. Dad stuck his hand out of the window just as the song came on and said, "Feel that coolness. Feels like you're running your fingers through silk." Me, Mama, Joey, and even Daddy Cool all did what Dad told us to do. And Dad was right. It felt great. It's one of the best parts about living in the mountains, having your arm out the window as you drive down the road or as you ride down the road and feeling the temperature change. And oh, sometimes it feels like it's water, sometimes it feels like it's silk. It just depends on where you are, but to stick your hand out the window and feel that is one of life's greatest simple pleasures. Wiggle your fingers in it, Dad said. We all did, and the air seemed slippery and cool as it blew on your hand. We're so high and the air is so perfect that do you know what I think we're doing? Dad asked. What? I think we've got our fingers in God's beard, and as we drive along, we're tickling him. Byron acted like he was going to throw up. As we drove down the mountain with our arms sticking out of the windows and our fingers wiggling in the breeze, I thought the brown bomber must look like a bug lying on its back with 4 skinny brown legs kicking and twitching to try to put it back on its feet. Whatever we were doing, it was the best part of the trip so far. What could be better than driving on a mountain while Yakety Yak played and cool, light air blew all over you?